the paper and the pencil part is just as important as the hammer and the nail.
We think we're making life-changing money for our business. They buy our business and then they do their thing.
Hey, give me $100 million. I'm going to go buy a roofing company.
If I asked you, what is your business credit score? What is trade reference reporting? What are private credit facilities? What's a general partner? What would your answer be? Because my answer was, I have no fucking clue what any of that is. I don't have my business credit account set up. I don't know what you're talking about. And it took me a few days for things to start to sink in and for me to start connecting the dots. And basically what I learned is we don't learn this shit as contractors. Nobody teaches us any of this shit. We have accountants, we have attorneys, we have different advisors, people that we view as smarter than us and experts in their field, so we trust what they tell us. But if you're a guy like me, you don't really lean on those experts very well. You don't. You're just so busy with the businesses. You're just trying your hardest. You're learning things as you go. You're looking at your profit and loss statement, but what does a balance sheet mean? And you're just trying your best and you learn things as you go. But I started to figure out, the more time I spent with you, that there's a certain way Wall Street does business. There's a certain way money works that us dumb contractors don't get taught, and we kind of don't know what we don't know. So I thought it'd be a great idea to try to have this podcast and explain these ideas to let people know there's a whole world of money out there. And us as contractors, as we start to grow our business, we can actually enter that world and become sophisticated if we have the knowledge. You've spoken to hundreds of contractors out there, specifically roofing contractors as well. What do you find are the blind spots that we all have when it comes to like our business finances and the way money really works?
I think what's interesting is when I found the problem, it was when a contractor was literally running into the meter or the stop sign, like slamming into it because they didn't have this foundation. I mean, I saw them getting wiped out. One name comes to mind.
Going out of business.
Going out of business, yeah. So when I met him, he said, hey, I'm having trouble with cash flow. And yet he was dominating his market. And I made the assumption that because we're in the age of information, YouTube, social media, right, you can literally find anything, that somebody was filling in the slots. I said, oh, this is great. We're in the information age. Everybody knows what I know, so there's no need for me to say it. I gave it a name. I started referring to it as the trident. People are really good at generating sales, right? And by that I mean relative. You can generate a sale, and then that sale sometimes becomes AR. But then what I noticed was they're missing the third part, the third leg, and this was the funding side. And for most people, they say, yeah, I got a business credit card. I got a loan from my bank. And when you look at the overall picture, this is why this is so hard to explain and cover, because it becomes very personal for the business owner and then for the business in and of itself. The first conversation we had, right? First thing I shot out, I said, what are your financial ratios? What's your inventory turnover ratio? And right away, people are like, wait a minute, let me back up. So how do we do this in a way that we can connect the dots? It's very simple. There's 3 layers. There's the known knowns, there's the known unknowns, and then there's the unknown unknowns. So we're going to cover that part right now and do our best to connect, relevance to what people's understandings are.
Yeah, the unknown unknown. So like if you're a business owner like me, you've done pretty well at growing your business because when you realize that there's something out there, some tool for your business, some way to improve your business, you learn about it or you see someone else doing something that works and you're like, oh shit, I need to do that. So when you start to introduce these ideas to me and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this all wrong, I need to do that. So like then I buy in because I realize like these are valuable things that I need to have. Let's start with the proper way to use credit because all roofers know like AR is a thing. Like, and I've never really had like serious financial problems in my business because we've been pretty responsible as far as like doing a good job, collecting quickly, paying our bills. But I could be in a way better place. I could have more cash. My balance sheet could look healthier if I had been using credit correctly this whole time. So like, what's the right way to think about structuring your cash, your lines of credit, credit cards, to be able to pay your vendors for your materials and things like that?
Well, on what you said right now, there's the financial ratios, and your working capital ratio, your liquidity ratio, your debt to income ratio. Those are metrics that you can use for the business because you may have too much cash on hand or you may not have enough. When I see someone selling and then they have some AR, like especially the guys who do insurance work, what they don't realize is the ticking time bomb because you've got AR that's aging, and the more it ages, the less valuable it is if you're going to go and pursue funding. And the biggest thing that I found was that, and I don't know how else we can convey it, and we hope we keep this thing as simple as we can. Most people go out and they borrow money with the assumption that it's against your receivables or your assets, or your personal credit, because that's what most people get underwritten under. What they don't realize is that there's a whole other ocean of funding, which are the credit facilities. And by a simple definition, it's money. If you're a hot dog vendor, it's to buy the hot dogs and the buns. It's not to finance your cart or your working capital, So that right there, what I see a lot of is contractor has their checking account, right? They have their main cash account. And then they get a loan from their bank, for example. And then what they do is they use that as the front end of the business. Simple stuff like put that thing in the back as your overdraft. And then if you do have trade suppliers, like the material suppliers that give you trade credit, the 30-day stuff, use that. But don't use that as, okay, this is how I get by. This guy gave me 300, that one gave me 400. What happens when they stop, right? When they freeze you. So the only reason to have trade credit is to start reporting it so that you can pop up on the radar, of those that would lend because you know how to, like you said, see, like in your case, you're doing a phenomenal job. The only problem is nobody knows about it,
Yeah, that's a good thing to hit on. So using your vendor credit accounts is a good way to get on the radar to start trade reference reporting so that you can get away from being handcuffed by your supplier credit lines and use credit facilities to fund your business, not them. What are the benefits to use credit facilities to fund your material purchases, your hot dogs, as opposed to ABC Supply's credit account?
Let's go to the famous phrase that keeps getting thrown around, private equity, general partners. They have tapped into the ultimate endpoint of credit facility or private capital. They source that capital, they create funds that then become the credit cards and the ACH lenders and all the stuff that you see out there, So that's the endpoint. That's where the knowledge eventually reaches. As far as a contractor, see, contractors, again, I said it before, I'll keep saying it, contractors are middle America. It's the middle class. So if a contractor gets his roofing license, right, and then he sets up a couple relationship with a couple of suppliers, right, boom, open your business. But as soon as you do, literally the day you form the LLC, for example, in my opinion, I mean, again, this is just commentary, go ahead and contact D&B. Get yourself a DUNS number. Start trade reference reporting. See, when I hear people say business credit, I equate that to snake oil, How do you get business credit? You don't. You do trade reference reporting. That simply means anybody that you pay via invoice is a lender, So look right now, open up your file cabinet. Whoever you pay by invoice, they are literally your lender. The only difference between you reaching the nirvana of money supply is if somebody's going to know about it. Now, the irony is some of those people that lend you through invoicing are reporting on you. You just don't know it. Why? Because in the world of consumer credit, it's regulated. People need to be protected because it can wipe out, society. But on the business side, it's like the Wild West. There's rules. There's the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, that it gets followed. But most people don't know anything about that because it is not an education campaign. So I see a good guy that starts a business, starts sales, boom, you got one leg of the trident. They develop some AR. And if you're in insurance work, it's going to be a very large AR, And all they got is that loan from their bank that's usually 10% of their cash flow, which is garbage when you consider the total cash needs that you need. Remember, to make 20 cents profit, you need 80 cents, right? That's the equation. That's the math. So you're going to be top heavy, and you're going to eventually run out of cash, especially like right now that when the store market is down, right? A lot of them start contracting, you know?
Yeah. So just to put my situation, to put some context around what you're saying, $20+ million business. We spend around, for easy math, 30% on materials. So I'm spending around $7 million a year on materials. The banks, great relationship with my bank, will give me 10% of the line of credit of revenue. So let's call it $2 million. So now I have a $2 million line of credit to work with, even though I'm buying $7 million in materials. And I'm also trying to grow my business, put money towards marketing, hire people, make all the moves I need to make. There's people out there that private equity knows, and this is where these are the types of people they get their money from to do these big roll-ups, that would lend a roofer like me money if I had my trade reference reporting in line, if ABC Supply was reporting that I never missed a payment, I've been on time, I've paid early my entire career, if all the other vendors are actually reporting my payment history, but they're not. Some are, but a lot aren't. So we went through Dun & Bradstreet, went through nav.com, went through Experian.com, looked at the way my reporting was done, saw ways I can improve. And I did have a healthy number, but it should be way better based on my actual business history. But I'm in year 7 now, and I wasn't thinking this way. If I would have been looking at this from day one, who knows? I may have a 100 score doing the things that you've been telling me to do. And now I don't need to get credit from ABC, Beacon, SRS. Yeah. I can get credit from private money who's willing to give me way more for my business. Who knows, maybe $10 million line that I can operate under.
Going on what you just said, not only would you get the $7 million to buy the materials that you're acquiring, but they would even say, let's give you a $20 million line. Let's see what you can do with that. Because again, all your numbers are in line. I was in Tennessee, met a wonderful contractor doing over $30 million a year. And in a 7-minute ride from the restaurant back to the business, I said, here, guys, you're good people. See, again, middle America. I said, invoices, you pay them on time? Yeah, every month, on time. In fact, a couple of days early. I said, do yourself a favor, start paying them 30 days in advance. Your paydex will now jump to 100. And people say, well, that's almost impossible. I'm like, it's impossible because the reporting only says 80 means prompt. So when you have an invoice and you pay it, boom, prompt 80. Pull up your own scores, you'll see prompt 80, prompt 82, prompt 84. Rarely do you see a prompt 100. The only way to get it is to literally pay in advance and then make sure that they're reporting, And stuff like this is kept, like I tell everybody, as much as I see on YouTube, I have not yet, in all the years that I've seen YouTube, a single video that truly, fully immersely educates and transfers the know-how. I've mentioned to you before, amazing individual. May God accept him, with open arms. Norbert Mendel wrote a book called Wealth Management in the New Economy. And his entire book, he's a 78-year-old man. His entire book was, I got a license to sell securities and I was a CPA and my job was to put people's money into investments and I didn't know a damn thing. And what I did know at the end of it was that, this is what you need to know. Knowledge like that is beautiful, but you don't find it on YouTube. You find link bait, you find, entertainment, you find curiosity or at least something that will get you going. But to get the full picture, like I said, find me a video that says Paydex 100, how to get it, not a single one. This is probably the first one that puts it out there.
And it's not super complicated stuff. It's pretty simple, like going through that and understanding how trade reference reporting works and like what you would have to do to get a 90 to 100 what do you call it? Paydex. So say I started my business correctly. I had you in my corner from day one. We had 100 Paydex number. Are guys coming to me, offering me money, or I'm going out to seek them and saying, here, look what I got?
That's the beautiful part about it, that when you've got all that structured, again, trade reference reporting, they literally come to you, Because watch, for example, if you're a roofing contractor that's doing, like in your case, right, 20 million plus, you're already on the radar because you're already popping up. Your numbers are popping up. So even if you're not reporting, they're reporting you. Remember when you first pulled it up, you saw that, you're like, oh, Jesus, they're watching you, but you don't know that they're.
Well, let's define who they're watching. Who's there?
So like Dun & Bradstreet, as you know, it's a repository, right, of business information because you want intelligence, right, that kind of data. When a lender lends money out, on the consumer side, right, you got your Experian, your Equifax, your, the other one. On the business side, there are equivalents. In fact, there's like 4 or 5 of them. But the catch is this, and this is kind of funny. Well, some people don't know this. Like Dun& and Bradstreet, for example, will report the business line that's operating, but it won't put in who is reporting. If you get set up with Business Experian, it'll give you the last 4 digits of the account number, so at least you can start to use both to match them up. Once you bring in the other components of the other parts, you can literally start to map it, and now you start to understand why your BIN number with Business Experian is 80 instead of 100. Or why Dun& and Bradstreet has you locked in at an 80, even though you have an impeccable payment history, on your $2 million.
Explain who the lenders are and what they really want.
Well, this is what gets interesting because, again, when you go to a bank, banks are regulated like hell. You know what I mean? They have depositors' money. You got grandma's money, her savings account. They are by far the most regulated, the most conservative about that stuff. And when, like you said in your case, right, 10% against your receivables is very conservative. So the irony is, if they're giving you 10% and they're that regulated, now we go to the private credit market, right? And that's where, Pandora is waiting for you. But think about it from their perspective. If you don't have a DUNS number, if you're not a Dun & Bradstreet, if you have a BIN number, or like people that go to SBA, for example, right? Yeah, I'm going to get an SBA loan. And when people say that, right away I ask them, I go, what's your SBSS number? No clue. I said, see, this is just a self-sabotage, It pains me to see it because I can't stand it when it looks like all I'm doing is showing people just how much I know. It matters to me more that people know what they need to know to go do what they can about themselves.
All right, so what if I ask you this? So yes, my bank gives me a 10% on revenue line of credit. That's the line I've always had. My revenue goes up. Next year I renew. My line goes up, 10% of revenue. I've never felt the need to have a bigger line because we've just managed cash properly. We've always had money laying around for bills. Is there another reason why I would want the larger line that you say that I should be given by somebody because of the size of the business?
That's a beautiful line because, see, I know there are some folks that are very conservative. They're like, yeah, I won't borrow because, I don't want to pay interest. The irony is there's the exchange. Let's just assume you could get a loan for 7%, right? And somebody else offers that at 8%, and you're like, hey, that 1% is, it's a lot of money. It is in the context of revenue and income. But against your balance sheet, see, it's a different number. It's like I try to explain that to people. I said, when you see somebody claiming that they bought a Rolls Royce, if they bought it with income, they're doing it wrong. It should be bought with the balance sheet because the balance sheet always has a greater number. That's the multiplier. When you hear like a roofing contractor being offered blah, 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 X number EBITDA, that's the balance sheet. That's the other side of the equation. The revenue may be here, but the multiplier is the balance sheet.
Well, we think of EBITDA as bottom line on the P&L. That's how most roofers think about it. And net income, gross profit, overhead, EBITDA.
Net plus the depreciation and amortization.
Right, so explain why the interest, because of the balance sheet, we shouldn't give a shit about the interest we're paying on the line.
Because you're giving up the possibilities with that difference. Like that 1% on that loan for that portion is what you could use to create X number amount of more revenue and make your balance sheet that much greater. So 1%, that could be, let's turn that into dollars. If that 1% was $10,000 in interest, but allow you to generate 1 million more in sales, and your net on that was 200,000, and let's assume a 10 times multiplier against revenue, or net revenue for that matter, or 5 times revenue, you're looking at a valuation increase on your balance sheet of 500,000 to $1 million.
100%, because you have more cash to spend on growing the business. So like in my situation, we've grown pretty well, but I'm always managing the marketing budget to have it in line percentage-wise of revenue of where I'm at in the business. And then I've got to say, okay, my marketing budget's this, but my payroll's here, and then I have all these, so my overhead's this. Yeah. And I'm managing that spend, even though I'd love to spend double on marketing to grow, because I know we would double if I was able to, but the cash isn't there to do it.
Keep in mind, the reason this entity, SMB, exists is because when I started selling for contractors, and then of course we eventually built Radiance, the service that we have, they started asking like, hey, hold on, can I pay you later and so forth. And that's when I didn't even know that they had the problem until it became very apparent that they were all having cash flow problems. What do you think happens when you go out and in 7 months you sell $6 million for a contractor? You know, he owes you 600,000 commissions, but he made 6 million, so you're expecting payment, and then all of a sudden I'm walking into a meeting to be told that I'm going to be getting paid in payments because they don't have the cash flow, and it just blew my mind. You know, how? What do you mean you don't have the cash flow? You know, well, you know, if I give you what I got, then that's it. We close our doors. So we literally worked out a payment plan of 3 years. I even forgave a third of that money because there's no way you can even pay me. I said, why are you even offering 10% commissions if doing so is gonna, you know, shutter your doors? He didn't expect me to sell the way I do. I mean, I'm using automation. I'm using radiance, you know, but it literally opened my eyes. And that was a guy that just couldn't pay me because he had no idea what his, you know, working capital ratios were. None of that stuff. QuickBooks was where you just, you know, I guess use it to your tax returns. No understanding of the math and so forth. It didn't get real until another contractor, you know, and Dimitri knows who that one is, you know. 1.4 million in AR, boom, shutters his doors, you know. Why? Bought the building with the business, put debt on the books, you know. Real estate debt doesn't belong on the books if you're talking about growing the business, you know, should have structured it different. And that, see, again, this is all opinion commentary. You got to go to your proper attorney that handles that type of business. You got to have a CPA, not a bookkeeper, that understands the type of tax structure that you have. You know what I mean? And you get a real banker that understands what you're trying to do with the business, you know. Because just because you walked into a community bank and you talked to the person there and they said, have a seat, I'll talk to you, you know. Reverse that whole thing before you even sit down and ask them, what kind of banker are you? What kind of loans do you make? Do you have any contractors? If they say no or you're our first, walk out, you know?
Yeah. It's so hard when you're picking advisors and you're coming up, like, you know, you're going to the bank, you're opening up your first business. You don't know anything. You don't know who knows what. Like, I meet guys all the time. Tony specifically is in my head for a couple of reasons on what we're talking about. He's the guy that, you know, like your dad tells you when you're growing up, credit's bad. Don't get in debt. Don't do this. And like, if you're looking at it in a personal financial responsibility sense, I get it. Yeah, don't finance a couch because you want a fancy couch in your living room. Right. Bad idea. Yeah. But when we're talking about business, all businesses use credit. Yeah. All businesses use credit, but we have such like a small mind for business when we start a contracting company that nobody teaches us this shit. And then the same guy is like, no, my bookkeeper's the best. And I'm like, we'll see, bro. Like, why do you think she's the best? Well, because she's nice to me. It seems like she knows more than I do, so she's the best. Mm-hmm. But then I look at his balance sheet. It's all fucked up. It makes no sense. Everything's out of place, but like, we think she's the best. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to pick the correct advisors when you don't know shit yourself. It's very tricky. So like, what would you say to the guy that is listening to the things we're saying, maybe doesn't understand all of it, understands he's in the dark, understands he needs to learn more, but just doesn't know how to pick correct advisors that are really going to give him the knowledge that he needs?
I would say, remember, we're talking opinion and commentary because that's what you got to go get the people that are licensed to cover this stuff. But at the very least, stop telling them and start asking them, you know? Go to your CPA and say, what would you tell me that I need to know that I haven't allowed you to say? A lot of times, brother, when we're paying somebody, you know, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to lose their job.
That's really good, though. That's a simple piece of advice. Just like, hey, I'm a new business owner. I don't know shit about shit. What do you got for me? Give it to me. Because, like, you've even given me some things that, like, I call my CPA about, and I, like, just pose the same questions that she's kind of giving me the same information. And then it's like, well, you're a dipshit, dude. Like, you're not even trying to learn. You're not asking to learn. You've got this woman who's been in your life for 4 years. She's got all this knowledge, and you haven't knocked on her door at all. You just you send her your books to do your taxes, and you move on.
See, and that's not my business. I don't get compensated for that. And she is licensed, and she is compensated. So if we're talking about it just as they say in the course of having lunch, and you go to her and you say, hey, what else am I not asking you or am I allowing you to say? And then watch this. If you do have an attorney and you say the same question, what would you tell me about my business that you probably haven't allowed you to tell me before? Write those answers down and then go down the street and ask another attorney, what would you tell me if I was a roofing contractor, what I would need to know? And then write those down. And then go to a third one and ask them the same thing. And what you get is dimension, brother. You know, the triangle is the strongest thing, and because of the fact that it has those elements to it. When you get three opinions from three different sources, you get dimension. You ever seen those idiots arguing on TV, that, especially the sports guys, that debate? That's because you're watching different people with talking points. Or one of the ones that I love to give people is, I said, look, if you want to know anything, go get a book on a topic from one author. And as soon as you read it, you're going to say, oh, yeah, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know if I got it sort of. Mm-hmm. Go get another book on the same topic from a different author. And right away, you'll say, yeah, I think this author is better. No, it's because you now have perspective and familiarity. It's when you get the third book from the third author on the same topic that now your brain starts debating. Well, I think I would agree with this guy, and this guy kind of has the right point, but I think I'd rather go this way.
Well, here, I'm going to push back on you because I'm just a fucking contractor and I don't have time to learn any of this stuff. I don't even really see why I need it. I'm just trying to sell more roofs and figure out how to stop having these customers upset with me. Why do I need to learn all this shit?
Because when it got real for Ed and he had to lay off 38 people and he was facing bankruptcy and he doesn't know whether his wife was going to walk out on him too, then it really matters, So there's two things that I've picked up on life by now, is that there's folks that say, I'm going to do, you got to do what you got to do. And then there's, you got to do what needs to get done. The irony is, if you do what needs to get done, then you don't got to do what you got to do. So that's the ultimate answer to that. We don't want to do it. Like I said, convenience, right? Who wants to bother? I don't want to read 3 books. I can barely keep up with the cruise and all this and that. I get it. Life happens, If there's something I already know about contractors, is that they are busy as, I've never met one that's not running. And if we have a meeting and a customer or prospect calls, he's going to cancel on me to go to that meeting because that's a sale, right? Hell yeah, I would tell him to run, don't walk, run. But at some point, here's what I say. Tomorrow hasn't happened. And for anyone that says I'm too busy, how do you find time to eat, sleep, and, relieve yourself, right? Everything stops for those 3 things. So if tomorrow hasn't happened and you got to do those 3 things non-negotiable, then you have time to plan out what happens.
Yeah, and then here's one. So like a lot of guys like me, we grow our businesses super fast. Obviously, there's AR, there's cash flow, you're spending more money, you're hiring people, you're spending more on marketing, everything's growing. It becomes pretty difficult to just pull money out of the business and set yourself up and put it in interest earning accounts and set yourself up for life if you got a family. But like at the end of the day, that's a big part of why the fuck we're working this hard. But it becomes hard to pull cash out and set yourself up, even though there's millions of dollars in and out of our businesses every year. Why is it so hard to pull a couple $100,000 out a year and put it away for you and your family?
It's what everybody, you've heard it many times said, you got to know your numbers. You got to know your numbers. Know your numbers doesn't mean that you got to be an expert on ratios and all these, nerdy sounding things. Knowing your numbers is, okay, like you said right now, right? I spend $7 million on materials. I spend this much on marketing, this much on overhead, and this is how much I turn in profit. When you have that math and it's working out for you, don't just look at that as, hey, I did great, let me go buy something. Slice a little piece of that and set it aside. In fact, when you do your sales forecast, you say, we're going to sell 3 million this year. Do a little bit of math in your head and say, if I know my numbers and I'm going to get 3 million, that means I got to get 100 leads minus, so many inspections, so many sales to get so many jobs. Take that math and you know how you add waste, right? You add waste to your roof jobs, right? So why the hell aren't you adding waste to your numbers, We add in 10, 50% for waste. Add 10 or 15% to that 3 million forecast, because that extra cushion is the money you could set aside if you hit it, or it could be what saves you from a negative event in the future if you don't. See? You do it on the jobs. I don't know why you're not doing it with your money.
100%. All this stuff makes me think of private equity because general partners. Because there's so much activity going on. Contractors don't really understand it. They shock us with these big offers. We think we're making life-changing money for our business. They swoop in, they buy our business, and then they do their thing. What's the biggest thing that separates, let's say, the large contractor from the PE firm?
Well, give it a proper name. Instead of calling it private equity, call it growth equity. because what they do is they come in and they buy a piece of your company, and then they implement systems that they know to work, kind of like those ratios I mentioned. And with their knowledge and your knowledge of the trade, all fingers crossed, right? That business is going to be worth a lot of money. And if you do it right, the exit strategy is take that thing public, right? Let it go retail stock, which is as high as it can go, and now everybody gets rich. Founder and growth equity investor, where there's the inequity is that you're getting an offer on EBITDA. I said to you before, there's 15, 18, 20 different valuation models, Now, in my opinion, again, remember, this is all opinion anyway. If I got a roofing license and I turned this into a $20 million business, right? Yeah, private equity might come in wanting to buy it from me for maybe a multiplier of whatever, 10x, 7x, 12x. But what you don't realize is that you are Doug in Tennessee, or Jeff out of, here in Florida, or you here in the southern part of Florida, or Dennis, who I talked to recently. All you guys that can build $20 million businesses, that means you're a market maker by all definition. You created something that you could not possibly do with regular work, 9 to 5, 8 hours, even if it was a job, right? So you're a market maker. If that was done here, it can be replicated. So what you're missing is these pieces of information. But it's like I said, we have the known knowns. We know how to tie our shoes, brush our teeth, right? We have the known unknowns. Hey, let me go take a course on bookkeeping or at least my financials to understand my business. And then there are the unknown unknowns, which is when you get off for a 15x EBITDA, you're not aware that because your business is successful and if you got the right software, you can literally open up 5 more, run it from that same software, and balance your numbers, pop up on trade reference reporting, and now you can literally turn your 15x EBITDA. You're not a beta anymore. You're now based on TAM, total addressable market. So you want to sell for 20 million? Go ahead, but you're worth 200 million. I'm not going to tell you what to accept. I'm just saying don't sell out because you don't have full information. Private equity, like I told you, the first half of it was they come in with business process and systems and understanding this that I mentioned.
But I would argue that the large contractor has all that in place too.
Yeah, there.
So what's the difference?
Now we're in agreement there. The difference is that the exit strategy for private equity is to say, let's cut costs, let's lay off some of these people because you have to. I mean, if you're going to make the numbers, shine, you have to start, trimming the fat. Whereas the contractor may not be motivated by that. You've heard me say the phrase, their numbers are not your numbers, right? And I meant that because from their perspective, they're trying to find a way to squeeze value and create the balance sheet. There you go, what we said a minute ago. They're trying to create the spread in the balance sheet so that they can have a gain and their end investor has a gain. You as the contractor, you don't have anything different other than the fact that they're coming in with funding, that they have a responsibility to the end investor, and they're trying to create that spread. You're trying to create that spread too, but you're doing it through income. They're trying to do it through the balance sheet.
So how does a roofer like me who feels like he has all the systems, all the software, all the know-how, all the operating efficiencies that they have, learns how to use private credit facilities, learns how to grow the business, learns ring analysis, learns how to greenfield, pops up 7 locations. What stops a roofer like that from going and getting the private funding himself?
Whether it's a brand new contractor or it's one that's been around for 20 years, just take a moment for yourself and pick up the phone and call whoever your advisor is, and say, hey, are we on Dun & Bradstreet? We got a Dunn's number. Are we reporting? Are they reporting? I mean, do we have a way to track? Let me pull it up, Go look at it. Then get set up with Business Experian, at the very least those two, so you can peek in and see what's being reported. And you'll be surprised, Hey, that thing says I got $100 and never paid back. That's not true. Clean it up. Get the people that you're making payments to report. Like, watch this. A good example. Say you hired a marketing company, right? And they're big enough that they should. And you're paying them whatever, a couple $1,000s a month. And you call them up and you say, hey, you're reporting, I'm making payments to you. Yeah, we're really happy you pay on time. Why aren't you reporting on my payments? Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Hold on, let me look into it. And if someone says, no, I'm not going to bother doing that, get one that does, because I'm not here to tell you that, oh, look, I can source this for you. I'm trying to tell you that trade reference reporting is what every business should be doing from the minute they open their doors. And if you're 20 years in and you haven't done it, you should be doing it, because then at the very least, it is accessible to you. Any business that is generating sales and revenue has that option if they know you exist, if you have your numbers in line. If anything, what private equity does, it goes in and does the things that you never bother doing. That's really that's the big distinguisher, to answer your question at the end point of it. They're doing the parts that you should have done from the beginning, which now it's coming through, a participation instead of it being how it should have been from the get-go.
So if a contractor learns all this shit, understands it, studies, does all the things he needs to do, starts trade reference reporting, builds amazing business credit. I'm going to say business credit, even though you say that term is wrong, but people understand business credit. Has great tech, pops up multiple locations. That contractor could go to the same sources that the PE firms go to for funding and get funding.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because look, and I won't give the name, but when I meet a contractor that's doing $35 million, and the most they got from their bank was $350,000. You're gonna just imagine, right?
Yeah.
The gentleman, as a gentleman as he is, because he is a total gentleman, humbly said, "Yeah, I gotta watch my numbers because of that." That first, when we said about the bank, the 10% on receivables, why are you even one bank? Get 3 banks. You know what I mean? Leverage that, and then once you have that reporting, go and build those relationships. You take the time to call your supplier, right? You took the time to go get the license. You took the time to open a bank account, but you didn't realize that part of business is having funding, whether it's debt or equity down the line.
I have a really good example of something I saw just last week. A customer at Metal Ops was acquired recently, and post-acquisition, they went from 40 million to 10, and that's under ownership of PE. But PE's backed with so much money and can just buy more and can just pay to fix it that they almost can't fail because they're backed by so much money. And they're not great operators, and they're kind of making a mess of the whole situation. But because they have all the funding, they're not going to lose. They're going to make a ton of money in the end, even though that specific purchase went from 40 to 10, which is what business gets cut in the 25% of what it used to be. But they have so much funding that they can't fail.
Let's go back to that part where you want to distinguish between the large contractor and the large funding sources that PE have. Flip the script for a second. Pretend that you're an end investor, You're the Bass family, or you're the Spritzkers, or any of those that are out there, very large family offices that have a lot of money. They're families that, if they go to sleep, they wake up millions of dollars poorer because they didn't, diversify. They're not trying to 10x that stuff. They're trying to preserve the principle, just keep it from going down. Because they literally will wake up millions less because the time value of money doesn't stop, In their office walks in 2 people. One is a GP that says, hey, give me $100 million. I'm going to go buy roofing companies. I'm going to do all these amazing things with them because I'm buying them based on EBITDA. And I'm going to dump them based on TAM, And you walk in and you say, I'm a contractor. I'm the actual contractor, by the way. I'm the one that built the business. Give me $100 million. I'm going to go ahead and build a market. And I'm going to get additional locations. And we're going to make this thing about total yield return because I know the business. If you're an investor, which one would you pick?
To me, it's a no-brainer because I know what I bring.
Yeah.
But you have to turn into the fucking sophisticated contractor that knows the shit, has the tech, can show them the numbers, does trade reference reporting, become sophisticated. Now, I don't think all contractors have it in them to become that guy.
And yet, if I build a roof, I guarantee it'll leak because you guys do amazing work. Your work is not easy. It's not fucking cookie cutter, You guys do a very specialized business, and somehow you manage the crews and the equipment and the materials and the deliveries and then the reputation and the Google reviews and all that. And yet somehow when I talk about this, it sounds like my stuff's sophisticated. I'm a fucking piece of paper and pen. You guys are literally managing all, like that roof that I'm seeing right there, that metal roof right there. Right, you know your stuff. I know that is, it's all about the cuts. Ask me to do it, I guarantee it'll leak. I don't know how to build that stuff, and yet you guys do. So take some of that wisdom that you guys got there and apply it to the other half of your business. The paper and the pencil part is just as important as the hammer and the nail.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us contractors are come from nothing people. We're simple people. We're blue collar guys. I used to live in my car. I did the fucking roofing work. Just a simple, brute kind of guy that I started. So I think like the big numbers and the sophistication and like, woo, Wall Street, like it kind of freaks us out. But then like exactly what you're saying. Like if I think about every year and all the things I learned year after year after year, it doesn't make me that nervous anymore. And I honestly look at PE as like, dude, you guys aren't fucking roofing operators. You don't know anything. I feel like I can operate a way more efficient, organized business than you can. I just need some tech. I need to do the work, but I feel like I can. So then it's like, I'm going to sell my business to you so you can deal with these people with money. Why not? If I could just slide you and then go to the money, then what could I do?
You're the roofer. You're the one that knows the business anyway. You just know that front end of the business. You need to know the mechanics of your business on that part. And again, I always told you, it's not complicated. Do you pay your invoice? Yes. Do you pay your staff? Yes. Do you know how to generate a job? Yes. Do you know how to buy supplies? Yes. And do you know how to deliver it? Yes. Then you already got all the math. You just got to now learn how that looks on paper, because that's what gets used to, a beta 8 or 10 exit or go to the investors and get the sources. Keep in mind, I ran into one gentleman that is a PE. I think he bought already 7 or 8 roofing companies. And the very first thing, I didn't know that's what it was until I later on did what I do, do my research. I said, the first conversation I'm going to have with him is be like, why are you buying roofing companies? First of all, return them to the market. I got something better for you, Mandelbrot, Mandelbrot is where that should be at, because now that fixes the market. Homeowners get a fair loan. Contractors don't have to pay dealer fees. In this case, the GPs are paid by subscription, not by 2 and 20 loads on the fund. And guys like him can help run that GP. Here, run it. This is what you do. What the hell are you doing buying roofing companies? What happened? Like you just said of that one, they went from 50 to 10, right? Put that person in front of us and say, where's your wisdom? You got a lot of money, but you got to go answer to those investors, and you already got to explain to them how you, non-roofer, decided to be a roofer.
Yeah, everybody's heard the term platform.
Yeah.
Like, once you build great brand, great reputation, certain level of revenue, maybe second location, maybe you made an acquisition yourself. Now PE views you as the platform. And they view you as the platform because they know that they can come in, buy your business off of you, and then attach a bunch of other businesses to yours because of what you built and because of what you did. And then they're even going to ask you to stay and talk to all these little owners and tell them to do exactly what you did. Yeah. Why do you need them? And then how is PE paid? So I'm PE. I collect $100 million from all these people with money. Yeah. Now I have $100 million. I haven't made a single move yet. I'm just sitting on $100 million. I told them I'm going to make them a great return. How do I make my money as PE?
You buy a roofing company for 7x EBITDA. You buy a few more. You pull them together. You package them. You dump them for retail, hopefully at a higher number. Investors get their money back in a yield, and you get your fees and a yield. That's it.
Yeah, so it's Wall Street coming in and scooping up everything we built and
right there,
and returning the money back to the richest people in the world.
I don't have a problem with people making money. Remember, we are a capitalistic country, right? Capitalism is powerful. But what I don't like is, remember the proper term, growth equity. Who started the growth, Andy? I'll ask you this. Who gave you the $20 million in sales? You did, right? You got up one day and started making phone calls and driving up and knocking and sending and spending money in campaigns, and boom, you built this. Now someone comes in and says, hey, nice job, let me get it from you, I mean, if you're cool with that, I'm cool with it. But a business is either, dying or growing. And I guarantee you that everyone watching this, from the small guy to the large guy, the small guy wants to grow. The large guy wants to keep it, right? And he maybe wants to grow, right? Because I never hear someone saying, yeah, we went from 20 million, we'd like to go down to 2 million and just settle in and settle down. Show me one, they don't. Usually they're the ones that are on the other side of that problem that I just mentioned, So software, from my perspective, if you remember with Radiance, it's look, here's something you can use to manage the business, the whole freaking business. Because the whole theory about all in one, I'm like, no. Some do this, some do that. You need something to centralize it. When it comes to your business, you built the business. This is what this will never change. You won't see it now or even later. I will never change of the opinion that when someone starts something, they are the original market maker. Unfortunately, the phrase market maker somehow got hijacked, that they say the guys on Wall Street, because they match buyers and sellers, they're a market maker. I'm like, yeah, you're a market maker type, but you're not the only market maker. When I got a guy that can hire people, train them, get a license, buy materials, and get customers and create a $20 million business, you're also a market maker.
In what industries is private equity not so heavily involved, but there's still a lot of private funding going on? So like basically what I'm asking is, contractors are dumb in the eyes of Wall Street. We don't know what we don't know. So private equity comes in, they buy us all up, they make a ton of money off us. Is there any industries out there where the businesses just mainly are going to the private funding and there is no real place for PE?
Well, PE hasn't been around that long. I mean, count the years and go to the sources, and they're not even 100 years old. They're massive now because they're in everything. Think about it. If you, like you started a business from scratch, right? If you understand private equity funding, the numbers, you know what I mean, what we're talking about, and you can go source 100 million, 200 million, a billion, right? And just go and buy companies, you know, and then eventually dump them in the retail market, you know. Why are you going to start from scratch? You know, so PE is everywhere. It's in everything, you know. You can't, open your wallet, half the credit cards in your wallet are all backed by PE, you know. Go rent a place, very likely you're walking into one owned by PE, you know. Go to the mall, you know, the strip center is all owned by PE, you know. So it's everywhere. Just people don't see it. Like I said, there are the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns.
What about all of our financing options in the roofing industry? Who's backing all that up? I use Enhancify, third-party financing. A homeowner wants financing. They go to my website, they go to foxhavenroof.com, click the financing tab. That's not Foxhaven giving them financing. It's this third party.
Under commentary and opinion, which is the best I can do, because remember, don't have anything to give advice on this stuff, and I don't know if I called Mike and said, hey, who's funding your Enhancify end deal? He's going to tell me two things. Either he's a dealer and he has the source to the capital himself, or he's a broker and he's just brokering them out to people that have the funds. So if he's a dealer, he's probably got a private fund to actually do the deals, or he's a broker and he's just getting a fee for sourcing them for funds that do that. But all that's private capital.
So what's with the crazy high interest rates and the dealer's fees?
Well, dealer fees, they're interesting because when TARP rolled around, you know, that's when dealer fees popped up. I mean, if you go back...
TARP, what's TARP?
TARP is the bailout that happened in 2007, you know, when everything went backwards, that Shearson, Lehman, Merrill Lynch, all of them collapsed, that the government came in and bailed them out, you know. Money supply got real short. So the few people that would lend, they started saying, yeah, let's slap some dealer fees onto that. It used to be that if I got you a customer, I would get a rebate, you know. I got you a customer on a $100,000 loan, I used to get a $1,000, you know, rebate or commission or whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it, correspondent fee. Mortgage companies, for example, operate that way. But then after that, it changed that I get you a customer and I got to give you a piece of you guys, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not all of them. A lot of them have dealer's fees. The one I use the most, they actually do give a small rebate, but the interest rates are insane. So the homeowner's paying for it in interest. So like you can't win.
Right.
We either jack up our price by 20% to the homeowner to cover the dealer fees, to give the homeowner a 1% interest rate, because it's not true. They paid way too much for their roof to get that 1%.
Yeah.
Or there's no dealer fee. I do get a small rebate for bringing them the deal, but the homeowner pays 17% in interest on $50,000. Right. So those are the two ways it goes right now.
Yeah. And see, when you're dealing with a bank, right, when you go to, especially like credit unions, credit unions is local money, that's actually the most local you can get. Every homeowner should be building relationships with their credit unions. Every business should at least know one in their area, Get to know them, go to lunch with them. It just kills me. We go to the trade shows, right? Go to RoofCon and IRE, all this and that. But if I ask any one of them, have you ever visited your local credit union? Oh, no, I don't even know where they're at, Get to know your local credit union, pick your primary bank, and then as soon as you like them, get yourself a secondary, Have that relationship, go to lunch with them every quarter, you know what I mean, just to say, shoot the breeze. Talk to these people, because that's where your local money is. Now, when you set up a DMB and business experience, for example, and you start understanding how to do that, like I told you, this thing, SMB, came out of the fact that people kept asking me, and as an individual, I couldn't. I needed to set up an entity to do it properly, And when we set up trade reference, I even didn't like the name business credit, snake oil. I'm going to get you business credit. Bullshit. You don't need me to do that. You can just apply and you're going to get it or not. And you might do personal guarantee or not, because it's not even a true business, card or whatever. It's actually you, and it's going to come up on your personal. Trade reference reporting is different. Trade reference reporting is anybody you pay by invoice, if you can get DNB and business experience properly aligned, it's like your resume, if you will, right? But of your payments. Now you take that data and you align it with your books and your financial ratios, and voila, you pop up. Or as what happened at one of the investor events that I went to, I just went to go shoot the breeze, see what was up. I ended up sitting next to some guys from one of the investment banking firms, out of New York. And the guy literally told me, I guess a couple of margaritas later or something, he's like, yeah, he goes, it's kind of painful that we'll find a business like one of your contractors and we'll tell them everything they got to do, which is what I'm just describing, trade reference reporting. And we offer them $8 million to buy their business, and they're getting ready to accept it. And then one of these banks that sees them on DNB calls them and says, hey, would you like a $5 million line? Remember, this is the private stuff, not the bank stuff. If you're a business owner, you're going to sell for $8 million when you can get a line for $5 million, right? So that's why the information is limited. It's an information game, And it's not my responsibility to say, oh, look, I know this, so, come to me. No, it's everybody's responsibility to go find out. It's in that realm of the unknown unknowns, It could walk right past you, and you wouldn't even know it because you wouldn't even know what it looks like or what you're looking for. So the unknown unknowns is literally the at the pinnacle of knowledge, at the deep end of the well. It's where everything's at. But most people stay on the other side of it out of convenience, out of obfuscation, people purposely keeping you from seeing it, I mean, if I have a supplier giving me supplier credit, right, the couple $100,000, and they tell me I got to pay it every 30 days. If I'm lucky, they'll extend it to 45 or 60. Be grateful, but now do the other part. Start trade reference reporting. So later on, when you get the phone call that someone's willing to give you $1 million, now you have that as an option to buy from them and maybe a better price than somebody else. Keep the relationship. See, we're not destroying anything. Mutualism is the best way to work. But now you have them almost as the backup, like I said initially with the checking account, as the overdraft on the back end. I don't need to say this. Any contractor out there watching can tell you that they've gone through the constraints of cash. Right? Whether if their insurance work, they definitely have it. All of them have it. If it's the guys that sold to PE, yeah, they've got access to capital. But guess what? Now the pressure is now PE, because PE has to answer to those end investors. So that it doesn't go away. It's just been shifted. And then you got the guys that are true retail like you that are, like you said, your bank gave you a couple of million. Yeah, probably should be more. And it's all about the reporting. And when I look you up on DMB and you're sort of there, that's it. Lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. That's all it is. You're not, but that's what I mean. That's why I refuse to, I see the term get thrown around a lot, dumb roofers. I object to that term because
I say that all the time. I'm just a dumb roofer.
Because there's no such thing as a dumb roofer, because I guarantee you, like I said, if I built that roof right there, it would leak. The minute you walked away, it would start leaking,
All right, with that, Sometimes when I'm spending time with him, it takes a few days and like a few conversations around the same topics for all the dots to connect. But like the things we're talking about are super important. And the whole reason we make YouTube videos is to teach people things that they should know. So if you found anything interested or want to hear more or don't understand something and want to understand something, or if it all made sense and you realize you need to go do some work, reach out to Raul, reach out to me. You know how I am. I answer everybody.